Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Iskah Avaya. She's a longtime friend of mine who I always have good conversations with, so I wanted to experiment with just winging it and seeing what kind of things we come up with. We talked a lot about masculine and feminine dynamics in this complex time, which seems to be a theme that's arising out of the show, as well as how can women feel safe in this world and in this culture. We talked a lot about the spiritual path in general and some of the pitfalls that newcomers seem to fall into, including mistakes that we both made too. We also take the opportunity to bag on the New Age community as much as we can and just highlight some of the oversights or undersights of the community. Anyway, I don't know what to say about it, but you'll see. So as I mentioned at the end of last episode, this is the final episode of the ones that were previously recorded. This was recorded back in February. So from here on out, I will have new episodes that have been recorded recently. And I did have a camera issue in the middle of this one. I swear this is the last time that I'm going to have a camera issue. I figured it out a long time ago, but alas, there's still those ones that I messed up on. Anyhow, without further ado, here is Iskah Avaya. Welcome back to Chronicles of a Psychonaut. I'm here today with my good friend Iskah Avaya. We have no idea what we're going to talk about. It's completely unplanned, but that's fine because we always have good epic conversations.
Sure.
So first off, welcome back to the United States.
Thank you.
You've been gone how long?
For a little over 4 months.
And I know a little bit about what you were doing, but not really the full story. So tell us what you went to Australia to do.
I went to Australia to go to my school, which is a meditation school. And in Australia, I was doing a specific kind of session there where it was working to fortify will. And that's something that I've known that I've needed a lot of for a while. So I needed more. Oh God, I'm nervous. This is bad.
That's fine.
Okay.
You're doing great.
Okay.
I'm nervous too. I get nervous every single time.
Okay.
It's fine.
Anyways, so yeah, I went to Australia to work on cultivating more of my will, more of my fire, so that I could utilize that in the rest of my life, and also to hone in on my discipline and on my practices so that I could fine tune myself as an energetic antenna, essentially, to really be able to hold higher, more focused energy in my system.
And so your school is what they specialize. It's kind of spiritually oriented school, and they specialize in.
They specialize.
Yeah, go ahead.
They specialize in subtle bodybuilding. So they talk a lot about subtle bodybuilding and inner alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, the subtle bodies are non-physical bodies that we have that run energy through them. So in like Chinese system, Ayurvedic systems, they talk about them as meridian, the meridian system in the body. And subtle body is the part of why they call it subtle body building is it's a bit like with muscles, when you're bodybuilding your muscles, there's something already there, right? There's already a muscle there. And essentially, you need to exercise those muscles in certain ways to form them, to give shape to them, to give you more strength, to build more strength in your body so that then you're able to do more things with your body. You're already using the muscles in your body anyways, right? Like when you're moving through your day-to-day life, but it's different when you're consciously building the muscles in your body. So because they're uh, it's a non-physical body of energy is how they talk about it that we have. They're used to cultivate non-physical forms of interacting, perceiving, and kind of holding oneself in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like specializing these energetic centers in the body so that you have more functionality to be able to apply them in different ways in the world. And
So there are particular exercises or practices that help you? So give us kind of like, so you went there to strengthen your willpower. What else could one do? What else could one develop?
At the school, or to strengthen willpower, or
At that school, like, was this like a willpower course that you went to?
it wasn't a course. It's more of something that's set up so that you can apply your will towards something. So will is something that it's kind of hard to talk about what will is exactly, but it comes out in times where we're met with a challenge, right? And we have to overcome the challenge. And then all of a sudden there's this thing that we find in overcoming the challenge. And that seems to be something that we might call will.
Inner strength, that when you like dig deep and you find your will to continue on past the parts of the mind that might want to quit.
Yeah, exactly. So it was pretty much putting myself in a position where I was going to be challenged in all sorts of ways with that specifically. And because of the school that I go to, they set it up to where, you're doing practices every morning, every day. You wake up, you're doing practices every morning until you eat breakfast. And then after breakfast, you go into doing different jobs, different tasks. And then from that place, you're applying certain kinds of energetic perception to the tasks that you're doing so that you're aware in different parts of the energy body, and you're kind of applying and utilizing different parts of you to be able to do the tasks and ultimately to forge something beyond just pushing, beyond just like forcing yourself to do something, but something bigger than the little self to engage and to be
like
operating.
Self-confidence, or like traits that last, or getting to know yourself on a deeper level.
It's like something bigger than what we think of. It's kind of hard to explain. It's like something bigger than what we think of as the normal self, like the me down here that does things. The more you become attuned with different kinds of energy, different forms of energy, the more that you can kind of engage parts of the self that are bigger than what we know as just pushing and forcing.
So what
Does that make sense?
Yeah. What kind of particular, just to like kind of bring it into, bring it out of the abstract a little bit, like what kind of practical exercises were you doing to like help build that? Like what were the morning practices?
Well, they're hard questions because there's certain things I can't
Oh, it's top secret
talk
magic
about.
school?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. I don't know if I want that put on the podcast.
That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, the meditation from the school is a certain meditation called the Thunder Wand meditation, and it's a meditation that they teach. So you can take courses for that at the school. You don't have to be in Australia to take them.
What's the school called?
The school's called Clair Vision.
Clair Vision.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a school of meditation. So that's specifically what they focus on.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, like without saying very much about it, you run through different energy centers in the body throughout the meditation, and you do certain you engage the breath in certain ways as you're going through
Mm-hmm.
different places in the body.
Mm-hmm.
So
And so I know you had started going to school out here in California, and then they they are building a new center in Australia. And
no,
oh, okay. But you went out there, so they're a global school, I'm guessing.
yeah, there's a global, I mean, yeah, there's like a global team for the school, and there's different places. There's different kind of center points where there tend to be more people, like pockets, I guess you could call it. But the man who started the school, he originally started it in Australia where I was, and then I was helping develop, like doing different, we were building. So I was like lifting really heavy things and pushing wheelbarrows full of like big bricks and things like that were really getting me into my body and also engaging
Mm-hmm.
my will in certain ways. But it's also, so there's a headquarters in Australia, there's a headquarters in like by Shasta, and then there is a place in Berkeley that you can go to that's more in the world, and there's a place in Sydney that's also more like kind of in the world school. So if people that want to take classes that are more in those areas, they can take them. They don't have to like go into the outback of Australia to
Uh-huh.
learn things.
So did you get something out of it?
Yeah, I got a
How do
lot
you
of it.
feel different 4 months later?
Um, for me, a lot of what I was looking at in my personal process had to do with my relationship to my boundaries and my relationship to how I hold my energy as a woman, how I hold my energy as a sexual being, how I hold my energy as, it's a lot of like, I'm dealing a lot with the lower centers right now, because that's where I've needed a lot more work, where I've had more blocks and just traumas in the past and things like that. So how I feel is I feel a lot more confident in myself, and I feel like I know myself on a deeper level, and I'm actually a lot more like grounded in my own sense of who I am and what I hold energetically, and my connections to things like the earth, and my connections to my anger, and my connections to my fire, and my connections to being able to speak my boundaries more,
Mm-hmm.
which has been a theme for me. I mean, I've spent a lot of my life letting people cross my boundaries and letting people just kind of walk all over me, and energetically letting people kind of impress themselves on me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's controlled a lot of how much I express myself. You know, I've limited my self-expression. I've limited who I am in the world. I've limited my ability to say no. Um, I've limited my ability to speak up when people do things that aren't okay with me. And from that, what I saw was that I was compromising my own sense of self and my own truth, my own inner truth. I was compromising my intuition, because one of the things I noticed when I was kind of exploring these parts of myself was that I actually know when someone's crossing my boundaries, and my intuition is always telling me that, and has always been telling me that. And through not listening to that, and through not honoring what's being like this kind of almost like alarm that's going off, or this voice that's saying this isn't okay, and allowing things to continue to happen, um, I was creating a sense of like, I was cutting myself off from that voice, and I was creating a sense of distrust with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like the little girl inside of me that needs the warrioress inside of me to speak up for her and to create like a clear foundation for her to be in her magic and be in her innocence. Like she didn't have that. She didn't have anyone speaking up for her. So internally what I found was there's actually a part of me that wasn't even trusting myself very much.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not trusting myself, then how am I supposed to trust anything? Right? Like I would give trust to other people and then people would constantly break that trust instead of me actually trusting a feeling that I was having, and then from that feeling communicating or doing what I needed to do in a situation to make space for what is okay and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So in doing that work to find your voice and kind of like create and hold your own space,
Mm-hmm.
do you notice that, because, through my own life, I think all of us have been in a place where maybe we're more confident or less confident,
Mm-hmm.
and other people pick up on that in subtle ways.
Totally.
And there's a way to hold oneself, like when you're confident and you just hold your own space and you're like still and steady in yourself, that other people, whether they know it consciously or not, they feel that, and there's like a respect, like you're respecting yourself, you're holding your space, and then they know that, like, to not necessarily try and cross you, or that's not an easy fight to try and manipulate you or try and get something out of you or whatever. And then the opposite can be true, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're kind of sunken in yourself, not feeling great about yourself, people, more aggressive people can kind of sniff that out and take advantage.
Totally.
So, I'm sure you probably notice right away, like stepping more into your space. So do you notice other people treating you differently?
Yeah, I do. I especially because I'm still doing the homework of like fully integrating all those realizations and really that's also been part of my work, is seeing like, okay, I'm getting more in touch with these parts of myself now. The homework is like, I need to act, like I need these parts of myself out and operating in my life. So when I do that, when they are operating, when they are, really, when I'm cultivating a relationship with them, and when I allow myself to be in that space, yeah, people totally respond differently. And a part of it, personally, I'm still in a place where it's almost like I'm being tested. Like some things, like, are you really going to step into it? And so I still found after I was in Australia, when I went to Bali, like there were situations where it was like something, especially with men, there would be men that would be like taxi drivers or things like this, or that I would have interactions with at places I was staying, and they would make certain comments that were over the line, that are not good to make and not respectful and not okay. And there was a couple times where I just let those comments fly. And then I checked in with myself and I was like, wait, that's not okay. Like, this doesn't feel good for me. It's not okay that they're saying this. And so the next time those comments were made, I would just be really fierce and direct. And that's where I was scared, was I didn't want to be direct. I grew up in Northern California. Like, no one's direct here. Or we're taught kind of not to be in our subculture. So from that space, it's like instantly the people would shift, and instantly there would be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm just, and it feels to me like standing in a place like in my belly, like in my power center, that's just like, no. And then the more that I speak from this place in me, the more that just resonates in my energy field, and then I wouldn't attract it as much, especially the days where I was like really exercising that. So like the unspoken energy is coming more in line the more that I rest. But I'm still in my experience, sometimes when I have these big realizations, or I find parts of myself, then there's some kind of test. I don't know where that is in my higher self, or there's an energetic counterpart inside of me that's like, are you really going to step into it? You know, are
Mm-hmm.
you really going to do the work? So
Hmm.
I'm in that space right now.
Mm-hmm. I've heard women talk about like the reason to stay silent or the reasons to just let a comment fly, or just let it go, rather.
Mm-hmm.
That there's like a fear of reprisal or a fear of
Mm-hmm.
conflict or even
Totally.
violence.
Totally.
That like, oh, if I say something to this man, if I like reject him or if I, scold him or something, if I don't just go along with it, then, is he going to get angry at me? Is he going to attack me?
Mm-hmm.
So in those moments when you were fierce and you like stood in your power, was that even a consideration, or have you felt that fear before, but you didn't feel it this time?
You know, I've definitely felt that fear before. Um, I've definitely felt that fear before. And I've also felt, it's interesting. Like, I've also felt when I really look at it, when I was younger, I would feel as though I was going to embarrass the other person
Mm-hmm.
by saying something. And I didn't want to inflict. Like,
Like
that
you
was
cared
the,
about their feelings even though they were kind of being
yeah,
inappropriate.
yeah, totally.
Uh-huh.
Um, I don't really know where that comes from. Um, but ultimately, it's a fear of confrontation. It's a fear of saying something and making someone uncomfortable. And boundaries make people uncomfortable, especially the ones that cross them.
Mm-hmm.
So I happen to be in Bali, and Bali is very feminine oriented. So as soon as I spoke up to these men who I knew had wives and I knew grew up, with matriarchs in their family very close to them, that I wasn't going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also the safest third world country I felt traveling alone as a woman in. So I had that benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I can also feel how there's something about really just holding that kind of stance that even if I was in another country or even in Oakland or something, where I I could I could feel how there's just kind of a don't fuck with me
Mm-hmm. I'm not easy
signal.
prey.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
When
I'll
it's
fight.
fully stood in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And there's a difference between kind of standing in it and like fucking claiming it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that is ultimately what is being cultivated is the more that I know my boundaries, the more that I really give credit to my intuition and my energetic know-how, and I have a ton of energetic know-how. But part of claiming that energetic know-how and using it for things like healing is also when things that are not okay are happening and I'm picking up on that and I'm not doing it, like I have to do something about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's honoring what I'm my tools or abilities or whatever you want to call that. So, I think that there's something about really fully claiming it that allows for a signal to go out that no one's gonna that just people just don't you don't attract anyone to fuck with you,
Yeah.
you know. As well as another thing I noticed was when I'm not claiming a part of myself that's fierce that I actually hold, then I attract situations unconsciously that represent the fierceness inside of me that bring it out. And so ultimately, I don't really like I have a choice, but I don't really have a choice. Like I'm just going to keep attracting people with strong wills that are fierce that are going to come at me until it's like, because it's almost like the
Challenging
world
you
being
to
like,
stand
claim
up for
it,
yourself.
claim it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
What did
yeah.
these men say to you that was inappropriate?
Oh, one guy, I think the one that stands out the most is this guy who I was staying in a building that his family owned, and he would come every morning and like make breakfast or bring breakfast because that was part of the staying agreement. He said that he had a dream about me,
Mm-hmm.
and the more like when I inquired about the dream, he basically told me that he had a sex dream about me.
Uh-huh.
And he like was like, what were you dreaming about last night? And like all this
Made you uncomfortable.
yeah, and like it was so inappropriate. It's so inappropriate to come, and it was the morning time. Like I had just gotten out of meditation. I was not in a space to have a guy's sexual energy coming at me already. Energetically he was coming at me, and then telling me that he had just had a dream where we had sex, and like and he's in my space, like he's in my kitchen that I'm renting, like he's in like in so many different ways it was crossing boundaries, right? And the physical representation and the energetic component in what he was saying. And at first I just shut down and I closed off, and that was what I found was my defense mechanism for a while was I would kind of turn into, actually in Australia there's this animal called an echidna, and it's this spiky, like it's really cute, but it's this spiky creature that kind of looks like a hedgehog only with porcupine. It's like a porcupine kind of. And when something scares it, it buries its head in the ground and puts all of its spikes out. It's kind of like, if I can't see you, you can't see me, and I'm spiky, so don't fuck with me. And that's kind of what I would do. I was like, oh, I'm like being an echidna right now, because I would get hard and sharp in my energy to push people away.
But
and
not
I would get very cold.
But not use your voice.
Not say anything. No. Like cold face, no expression, and like energetically I would push. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I realized was that takes so much energy. It's draining for me to just constantly do that. And it doesn't give me any space to just be myself. And in a world where I'm a woman that is, a young woman who can be shiny at times, and there's men that are just attracted to that, like I can't fucking spend my time being a sharp little echidna that's like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Also, there's a teacher that called it a fuck off field. I resonated with that. I was like, I have one of those.
In another podcast, we were talking about something similar, and about women as flowers, a metaphor of women as flowers, and how, when a woman doesn't feel safe, it's like the closed flower bud, and then, but really to open herself to the world, she has to bloom. But especially in cultures that are aggressive, like American culture, other cultures, maybe a woman doesn't really ever feel safe to bloom in public, and maybe in her relationship, it might even take a while then to like begin to open up.
Totally. But
and so in this other podcast, I'll ask you the same question. I asked her, in what ways, like how have you found ways to feel comfortable blooming in public? Like, because like she had this prayer or this dream of like all of the women in the world feeling safe to be their radiant selves, and feeling safe to be in bloom, and like not afraid of men, not afraid of violence, but like holding that space and holding that joy for themselves and that openness for themselves. And because there's a few women I see that do that they've claimed their space in such a way, they've empowered themselves in such a way that they can do that. They're open and free, and people don't really fuck with them, because it's not like the echidna spiky field, but people just know like oh, she's too powerful, like just don't, the predatory type knows to not, it's like the lioness. She's not a deer. She'll get you.
Yeah, I love those women. I learn a lot from them. It's actually something that for years, I think we've talked about this before, like for years I've been, I've asked myself, like, what is an empowered female? Like, what does the empowered feminine actually look like? Because there's all these examples of what I thought was empowered sexuality. And what I found out later was actually leaking sexuality, or women that have this sexual flow to them, but it's actually unconsciously just kind of leaking all over the place. And then they're defining their worth based on their attention that they get from that energy.
Right.
And it's really quite entangling and disempowering. And so when I realized that, I was like, well, what does it mean to be an empowered sexual woman and be in touch with that in a way that's really clear and clean and powerful and not compromising? Because part of what we're talking about is sexual energy. Like, it's holding a really powerful state of life force. I mean, that's what blooms through a flower, is the life force of the flower.
Right.
That's what makes the scent and the nectar of the flower so alluring and so attractive. And so, I mean, it's life celebrating itself. And life is life, you know. It just is different, comes in different forms. So how do you hold that? And there's, you know, there's a lot to that question. I think one of the things for me, I'm still in the process of blooming. I'm definitely not fully like anywhere I go. But boundaries is huge. You know, knowing my boundaries, knowing what I like, knowing what I don't like, knowing what feels good for me, knowing what does not feel good for me. Trusting myself enough to really hold that and uphold boundaries. Because there's something, again, like, there's something about when I trust myself to really have my own back, that I know that if someone or something tries to fuck with me, that it doesn't matter what they do, like, I got me. And that's something that no one can take away from me. And that's my birthright. And so, I mean, there's something even really attractive and confident and intimidating about women that really hold that state of like, this is my sovereign self, this is who I am, and you're not going to take this away from me. Because really it's my birthright to claim and know this. And there's something about that just communicates into the energetic field. I really like roses, and I like how roses are beautiful and smell gorgeous and have spikes on them. They have thorns, you know. You don't just pick a rose, you like approach it with reverence, and you know that there's a way to interact with a rose that just kind of commands respect. You know, and it might not be the echidna way because the rose is still blooming, but it has something in it that's kind of commanding that. And I think that also a part of that is cultivating self-worth and respect for myself, respect for what I hold, respect for what my sexuality is. My sexuality is a gift. It's not something to just give away. It's not something for me to dishonor in myself. When I dishonor it in myself by just giving it to someone who's not going to also honor it, then I'm just going to attract those kinds of people. You know, when I'm equating my worth with my sexuality, then I'm going to attract people who aren't respecting. I mean, and I don't have a good sense of worth, right? Then you attract people who are going to just disrespect the gift that of yourself that you're sharing with them.
And how do you determine whether somebody is a person who will honor you in the way that you want to be honored?
Oh, these are good questions.
Is there a particular feeling, or just taking the time to get to know them, or, you know, what is it that clicks into place where you feel that deeper level of safety, or there's kind of like a confidence or a trust or a knowingness in that person?
I really, really appreciate when people take the time to get to know who I am. I think that, like, again, like, a flower can smell really good and be really beautiful, but like, if you don't really know what it is, or I don't know, maybe that's not a good metaphor to keep going with, but you know, like I can look a certain way and I can be a certain way in the world. But if you just want to grab me and pick me,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not going to spend time getting to know even why you're attracted to me. You just want me,
Mm-hmm.
and driven by the want in that,
The
like,
desire and
yeah,
grabbiness, kind of
yeah,
impatience.
yeah,
Right.
totally. I don't like that. Uh, that doesn't feel good. I do like when there's an intent, you know, that's like, I'm really interested in you, to the point where I'm going to respect you and listen to you and actually be really curious. Like there's something about someone's genuine, authentic curiosity and like genuine want to get to know someone, and not just know them like because of X, Y, and Z, because you look like this and you do this and you know whatever, but because I want to know what it is, like what is the life force that's blooming through you,
Mm-hmm.
like what's behind the appearance. And
And kind of also discover, like, what is it that attracts me to you?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about that process, like it's a different, it takes more time, it takes patience, it takes, I mean, there's something that feels really authentic and genuine there. And it's like, I don't know, for me, like, I feel like I can smell it when people just aren't
Mm-hmm.
really holding that.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might just be that they don't know how to move through that process because our culture doesn't really teach that. You know, our
Mm-hmm.
culture teaches this more primal, like, you know, you get the partner, you like just you dominate the situation or whatever. You allure them, you trick them, you seduce them into an image of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how you really get partnership. And I don't know, I just
I think there's
doesn't
a
resonate.
feel, or I know what you mean by a smell. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not an actual smell, but there's like, you catch the essence of it somehow.
Yeah.
There's certain feeling when somebody wants something from you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like, this person is coming to me because they see something in me that they want,
Yeah,
either
exactly.
from me or something that they want for themselves. There's a curiosity or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other people that approach because they want to share something or they want to connect, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just trying to like get something out of me, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a different feel to that. It's more spacious,
Mm-hmm.
it's more relaxed.
Yeah, there's something about that, or there's actually space for the mystery that's between both people. Like there's space for unspoken things that are, I don't know, hard to put into words, but we kind of discover through connecting with each other with words. I don't know if that makes sense,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, just being approached with respect in general, like not like you're a piece of meat, you know.
What's your experience of respect or disrespect in this culture? Like, and I ask that because obviously there's so much happening in our culture right now around um, revelations of like rape or
Mm-hmm.
sexual abuse or sexual misconduct, all these things. And it's been revealed, I think, to a lot of men, the depth of the problem that's in the society, which
Mm-hmm.
maybe many of us didn't actually realize what it's like to be a woman, and just the feeling of like constantly being under attack or probed at,
Yeah,
while in public.
totally.
So is that like is are there a few like key standout moments in your life that um kind of shape that picture, or is it like really like a daily thing? Like you go through the market and it's just like you're constantly having to have walls and shields up. And that has that element of disrespect. Like, do you feel disrespected in this culture, I guess, like on the daily, or that women are?
You know, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, just on a general, like, collective level, there's just, sex sells, right? There's that whole
Yeah.
thing, right? So the female body is just used so much to just sell things because it's so alluring, it's so beautiful. I mean, why would you not be attracted to, I'm bisexual, but also like just the female form. There's something about it that is, if you look at like the Venusian principle, like Venusian energy, as in like correlating with Venus, is it's yin,
Mm-hmm.
right? And yin,
It's
a yin
giving.
way of being, it's giving, and it also does nothing but attracts
Mm-hmm.
to itself, right? Whereas like something of like a Mars energy is more like penetrating, and it's like full, it just goes and it gets what it
Mm-hmm.
wants. Whereas if you look at female sexuality, a lot of it, or the feminine principle of sexuality, I should say, because there's women with Mars ways of going about in their sexuality, but the feminine principle, it it exists, and like a flower,
Mm-hmm.
it just is, and it's fragrant and it's alluring, and all the bees come to it, and it doesn't really necessarily do anything, but it's still doing, right? It's still attracting. So I think that it feels to me like that principle has been taken advantage of. Like it's really attractive, it's easy to be drawn into it. So there's that way of it just being completely disrespected. And I think also on a collective level, that's part of why the patriarchy became what it became, because that's scary. Like that is powerful. I mean, that is, what is that? And how come everyone is always attracted to it? And why is there a force that's always mysterious and deep and alluring, just naturally existing? And the need to dominate that and control that. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty obvious how that's being disrespected. But you're talking about me personally and stories of me
Oh, no, I
personally.
wasn't asking your personal, but yeah, exactly what you answered. I just asked more about this culture and your
Yeah.
perspective on it.
I
Well,
mean, can I say one more
yeah,
thing about
of
that?
course.
So another thing that I wish, and if I ever have a daughter, I am going to teach her this, is that it's never your fault if a man's turned on by you.
Mm-hmm.
Because no one taught me that, which someone should have taught me in sex ed. And so many times, like most of the time when I was a teenager and I did sexual things or had sex, up until I was 18, and the first time I had sex, I was 14 years old. Up until I was 18, almost every time I did something new sexually or had sex, it was because I thought that it was my fault that they were turned on, and that they were going to get like blue balls or something if I didn't do something about it, and I was going to cause them pain.
Mm.
So I would consistently compromise my boundaries, compromise my boundaries, compromise my boundaries, and do things that I was not ready in my body to do. I didn't feel safe to do. And so many times there was this pressure from guys that, like, come on, like, you
Mm-hmm.
have to, or you know what, like this kind of imposing thing that like I had to be a certain way with my sexuality because of my effect on a guy and his physiology,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, no wonder I'm having to do so much work on my boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't have any. I
Yeah.
compromised them over and over again. And I got used to, at a young age, putting an energetic shield up when I was around men. Um, I've regressed into places, doing inner work that I do, where my, like, when I was coming into puberty, and there was all this life force energy kind of like just appearing out of, like, I was blooming, and I just was, and it was just life, and it was experiencing itself through me and almost like celebrating itself. That's what it felt like. And then I could feel how unconsciously I was aware, unconscious to my conscious mind, but some part of me was aware there was all this energy that was like really attracted to it, like it wanted to pick, or it wanted to have, or it wanted to do something. And I just like I didn't have a free space to just bloom.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's disrespect or whether it just speaks to the uneducated part of our culture's connection to sexuality, I don't know. I think they kind of both go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're not educated about something and the way to respect it, then maybe you just unconsciously disrespect it.
Yeah. Well, I think not only do we not have a good understanding of boundaries, but we have a harmful one. Like well, there's two parts. I think speaking about teenagers and the age of puberty and what we teach young men and women. I mean, boys and young men, they're encouraged to like go out and get girls. That it's like you gotta to be the aggressor. Like you gotta make it happen. It's like incumbent upon you as the man. That's your job, is to like not necessarily be the aggressor, but be the instigator.
Sorry, excuse me.
All right. But we don't really teach men and boys how to do that in a way that's respectful. And going back to our flower analogy, which is a great analogy, like just thinking about women as the closed flower bud, like she hasn't bloomed yet, she's not ready. And all these bees are out there, and they're in a frenzy because of pornography, because of because of modern marketing. And there's like, for me, there's a feeling that I get that's exciting when a woman is attracted to me. Like if I see a woman and there's like an invitation, she smiles a certain way, or I can tell that she's attracted to me. There's a kind of an invitation, and there's an excitement that comes from that. And I think that seeing billboards or magazine articles or whatever. I used to read Maxim as a teenager. Or there's these men's magazines, but there's pictures everywhere of women offering us this invitation, or pornography to the more extreme, right? So it puts the bees into a frenzy, and they're hyper aggressive, and all the flowers are closing down to protect themselves. And I don't know, it's a problem. I mean, I'm not necessarily interested in passing blame or saying that like who's at fault for this, but I think it's certainly like marketing and media is a big part of the problem. I don't necessarily know what to do about it, but that's my theory.
I mean, it feels, I totally agree. And it feels like, I mean, in all of these different ways, right? Like whether it's pornography, whether it's Maxim models, whether it's just the whatever it is, like the women on advertising ads. A key place to start is recognizing there's some kind of power play happening with the control of people's consciousness. And that
manipulation. Yeah,
totally. And that I feel like, we're in this time of like the rise of the goddess, and everyone's talking about, the goddess and the divine feminine. And I also see that being misused, because it's not all about, I see being misused in a way of it being misinterpreted, I should say, where it's not just about men bowing down and praising all women because the patriarchy was so terrible to us, and now men have to pay and women are going to be the queens of everything. I don't think that's in that light is what it's about at all. Because yes, men have to see, everyone has to see what's happened. Everyone has to acknowledge that what's happened for women and to women for generations and generations is wrong. It's not okay. It's not being respected, and really needs to, like, that wound and that pain and that trauma needs to be seen and taken responsibility for. And at the same time, women need to really take responsibility for their power. Because if the story is we're victims, it's men's fault, then what is the polarity to that? The polarity to that is men turn into a victim energy and women turn into the dominating energy. And I don't think women need to be in a space of dominant. Essentially what I'm saying is it's still men against women.
Yeah.
And it's still two powers that are being misused. And so what really needs to come into play is women respecting the power that we hold and being able to hold it, to cultivate it, and to hold it, and to walk in the world in a way where the actual empowered feminine, which you said, like, a few women. I know a few women.
Only a few.
It's rare.
Though. It is rare
that you see women really holding that.
And men actually need proper feedback. Like you said, when you were in Bali and the men were being inappropriate. Once you stood up for yourself and you were like, no, this is not okay. They kind of, sounds like they immediately realized it and they were apologetic.
Yeah.
But embarrassed. But it sounds like that they learned something, or that maybe that wasn't an encounter they had a lot.
I didn't feel like it was something they were used to.
Yeah.
No. It felt like it was something that they were used to getting away with.
Right.
And even if they felt like, oh, this isn't okay, it's like, whatever. I'm sure a bunch of guys that catcall women on the streets, like, probably feel that women don't like it. But it's only until, like, either a guy goes, yo, that's not cool, or a woman goes, hey, respect yourself enough to respect me. That someone's like, oh shit, maybe that's actually not okay.
Right.
So yeah, there was an acknowledgement of that for sure.
And I think that some men think that unless you say no, that it's okay, at least partially okay.
Yeah, totally.
If you're doing something and she's not telling you to stop, well, then she's not telling you to stop.
Yeah. It's not very receptive, which is an interesting point, because receptivity is a feminine quality, right? So, like, to be receptive to what a woman is feeling, you actually have to tune into a feminine quality to tune into a female.
Right.
And that goes both ways, right? If I want to be receptive to your energy when we're having an interaction, I have to tune into a feminine quality in me that can receive an energy in you. So, it's not that.
And the women have to, in order to speak up, has to tune into a masculine quality to actually put action. Cool. So men are getting in touch with our feminine sides, and women are getting in touch with our masculine sides. And, in some ways in our culture today, I see kind of a swing of the pendulum. Like you're saying, like, I feel like there's kind of I see a cultural momentum towards women becoming more dominant and men becoming more submissive. And there's a lot of public conversation about that. I think it's part of the balancing out. I think it's just a phase.
I agree.
And I think that
it's just a phase.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a reaction. It's like a collective reaction to revelations about the state of our culture, state of our society. And I think we'll end up evening out over time. Who knows how long, but there was something else I was going to say on that. I don't remember. But I wanted to ask you about healing.
Mm-hmm.
and the healing sense that, because you're a very good healer.
I'm learning.
You're very humble too, but you and there's a lot of healers out there, but there's very few healers who kind of have an intuitive sense. I call it the healer's sense, or I don't know what to call it, but um, it is, and it has to do with being able to tap deeply into that feminine essence, the receptivity. Like you are facilitating healing, you're maybe doing work on somebody, but the ability to really feel what's going on with this person, to kind of come outside of yourself and like gently enter into their field, to be able to feel what they're feeling, to be able to feel what they need. You have that ability, which in my experience, the people that I've encountered are just kind of innate in them. It's just kind of like a natural talent. It probably can be developed and cultivated, but it's kind of a rare quality. Would you say that that's something that you've always had, kind of that intuitive sense?
Probably. I think most of my life I didn't know that that's what it was, and I spent a lot more time being overwhelmed by just being overly empathic and like feeling more things than I even knew that I was feeling. And I got to a point where, I mean, my path naturally led me to doing healing work. I didn't want to be a healer, which I actually hear often with people who are natural healers is, you know, at least half of them are like, I didn't want to do this, like, you know, and I was going to be a fashion designer and a graphic designer, and I'm an artist, and I was going to do that. And more of like a destiny kind of thing, you know, came into my life and catalyzed me taking that path. So
how did that come about?
that came about in 2010 when I fell in love for the first time. I was in a really quite abusive short relationship, but the most verbally abusive relationship I've ever been in. And I kept running into this person, and there just kept being this resonance between us. And no matter how much I wanted to get away from them, they would just be at places that I was.
After you had broken up?
No, I was still with my partner.
Oh.
And so, and that's what actually led me to break up with my partner.
Okay.
Was this new person.
Okay,
and yeah, so he was the first man that actually ever respected me, and he completely adored me. He could see an aspect of who I am now that I had no idea about then, and he would tell me about it often, and I'd be like, yeah, I don't really know what you're talking about, but you're really sweet. You know, when you talk about that thing. And we, you know, he opened me up to a lot of things. He was really into studying Native American shamanism and pagan forms of earth magic, and he was really open in the spiritual metaphysical worlds. And whereas my last boyfriend had like spent 10 years studying spirituality and was giving up on spirituality. He was like, karma's not real, crystals don't do anything. Like at one point he started telling people like different crystals give you different types of diseases. Like he was really jaded. And wouldn't let me study spirituality. And this new person, he opened me up to all of these different spiritual worlds. And then after a series of complications, he ended up getting sent to prison. And so when he got sent to prison, pretty much my reputation and all my festival friends, my hometown, you know, everyone knew that I was with a felon, basically. And there was all these rumors that got spread around about, you know, all these terrible things that he never did, that everyone thought that he had done. And pretty much everyone thought that I was crazy, because at the same time I started having dreams about, other planetary beings talking to me, and I was discovering all of this new like world of energy, and that I could feel things that weren't physical, like, and there was all these unseen realms that I knew I was tapping into. And I started channeling and like having dreams where I would wake up and write pages and pages of all of this information that was just so out there, but had to do with the holographic light structure of the way that, reality is put together. And then was reading about quantum physics and seeing that matched these things I was saying in my dreams. Like, and no one had a context for anything I was
Mm-hmm.
talking about. And my heart was breaking. So there's something about heartbreak where, I don't know, like being in love and being in heartbreak, those are two powerful states. And then all this new stuff coming was really intense and new, and I had no identity. And a woman gave me a book on past life and between life soul regression hypnotherapy, and I didn't believe in past lives. So I decided that this was some kind of scientific-ish proof, because many people were experiencing similar things, and that I wanted to go to a hypnotherapy school. So I was 18 and I decided I was going to become a hypnotherapist. And that kind of opened the path for me.
There's I can relate to sounding a little crazy, or people thinking they're a little crazy. There's that fun phase when you start opening up to things beyond the ordinary world that you once believed in, or that most people believe in, and you're experiencing all these new things, feeling all these new things, but maybe haven't found the right way to put into words yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just talking about all kinds of far out stuff, and people just like didn't really know. Some people called me, "Oh, you're a little crazy. Oh, you're turning full hippie." But
yeah, that scared me. I really didn't want to be a hippie.
yeah,
I grew up in Sebastopol, like I hated on hippies most of my life. I was like really into punk rock and metal, and was like, I'm not a hippie.
Yeah,
like,
people have called me hippie. I'm like, I'm definitely not a hippie.
I shower.
Yeah, I make money.
Totally. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. I see that a lot when people are going through opening up to spirituality. It's like
it takes a lot of courage. It's challenging to change yourself, but especially to be witness changing by other people who maybe are not changing in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It helps, or it's even essential, I think, to meet some new people that can kind of take you under their wing, or that you can talk to about that kind of stuff, and they're going to be like, oh, I know what you're talking about.
Totally. Yeah. And oftentimes there's a gap between when it starts to happen and between finding those people.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it really, that's when it's the hardest.
Yeah. Did you find that you doubted yourself at points in some of the ways that maybe your friends or family doubted you? Like maybe some of the most far out stuff, like, okay, am I feeling this? Am I making this up? What am I? Because when you start to open up too, like it's like using your new eyes or your new eye for the first time. And it's a little blurry. It takes a little while to get into those subtle senses and really crisp them up. And gain experience where you're like, oh, I'm feeling something. I know what I'm feeling, and I trust it. There's a gap within too, where one might doubt themselves and their own experience.
Totally. Yeah. And, there were times where I was making up things that were a little far out.
Yeah, like what?
Oh, like, what's a good example? Well, I happened to wake up or like go through my first initial spiritual awakening moments at, I don't, by the way, think I've awakened by any means, but
It's a
I
process.
started to do that in 2010, right? So in 2010, there's like all these prophecies about 2012,
Mm.
and I was right before 2012, and so
You awaken just in time
yeah, that's what I thought, and no one else was
for the
awake yet.
ascension.
Yeah. So that was a thing, like that, and it's a thing that I still see people completely misusing the word ascension.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I was pretty sure that I was either going to be picked up by aliens and exported off of the planet, or I wanted my body to be able to turn into a body of light, which is what most people think ascension is, which it is, but you know, you have to be really high initiate to do things like that, really high
Mm-hmm.
master.
It doesn't just happen
No,
because of a calendar date.
definitely not. um, so yeah, those things I was pretty convinced of for a while.
You're not the only one. A lot of people were.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I was really drawn into that. It felt like a collective energy field kind of at that time of people that were kind of
Man,
in a
there were
mania.
there were people who were spending money on their credit card. They thought that like the
Oh
whole
yeah.
financial everything was going to collapse, all their all their
Mhm.
like that the old world would collapse to make way for the new,
Yeah,
and that they didn't have to necessarily be responsible financially or
totally.
pay off their debts. They would be wiped clean.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. You might want to cover your bases.
Yeah,
Kind of like banking a lot on that. But
totally. Yeah. Yeah, I see that. I still see things like that. I mean, not as much, not to the degree of that time though. That time was like people were going crazy. I have a friend who actually maxed out a ton of credit cards around that time, and
there were
he
a few
just
people.
last year finished paying them off.
I remember too, there was a festival clothing company called AD 2012.
Yeah,
You remember that
totally.
one?
Hmm.
And I wonder if they just didn't think that they were going to be doing business after 2012.
I know. I don't
But
know.
after 2012, they changed their name to AD 2013.
But now it's called Now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I think I saw that at the last festival I went
I
to.
didn't know what they eventually changed to, but
I was like, that's smart. They learned something there after rebranding twice.
third time's the charm.
Yeah, totally.
Now never expires.
It's true. It's true. Well, I'd like to think it's true. I think it's true at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard. I've heard rumors
Oh yeah,
that it's always now.
I have too. I can't confirm or deny.
Yeah, exactly. Me neither. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good topic. Just crazy shit that spiritual people believe in, without bothering to
To verify it.
fact check it internally or externally.
Oh, but it makes for so many passive statements that people use to blanket their whole lives in.
Yeah,
I think I mean, that's also a topic of spiritual bypass.
right. What
They're
is
kind of getting
spiritual
in there.
bypass for those who may not know?
Oh, you guys should read the book. It's a really good book. This book called Spiritual Bypassing. Everyone should check it out, especially if you live in Northern California or in any kind of New Age festival scene or scene at all. But spiritual bypassing essentially is using a spiritual catchphrase or a spiritual term in order to bypass a real life situation or your responsibility in it or very real, valid feelings. So, you know, one example is like it's really bad to get angry because anger is a negative emotion
Hmm.
and you should never be angry and you should always just think positively.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think positively, then good things will happen. And if people are not thinking positively, then it's bad vibes and it's their fault.
Mm.
You know, things like that.
And an especially painful one to inflict on somebody is like if something bad happens to them,
Mhm.
that they, you know, like they attracted it. Like,
Oh yeah, it's
oh,
their
like,
karma.
yeah, it's your karma, or like you were thinking negatively, or
Mhm.
you weren't aligned with your higher self, so that's why this happened to you.
Totally.
You know, it's like the complete opposite of compassion. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
and my beliefs are always evolving. I don't know what's what, but I feel like sometimes bad shit happens. And, I don't know. That's just life.
Yeah, and uh it shouldn't be free game for someone to get blamed for something or to not have compassion for where someone is, in general. Like, fuck, man, even if someone attracted something bad to them and they did, and it's really bad, like,
Yeah,
I'm
don't
not
throw that
gonna,
in their
yeah,
face.
exactly. Um, yeah, that's just mean. But yeah, I had an experience recently where I was talking to a friend who has like one of the most intense life stories of anyone I've ever heard. Like, the things that she has gone through since being an infant are probably more horrible than most people could imagine. And she's amazing. Of course, she's just this bright angel of a woman. And she said something about, because someone had said to her, it was something along the lines of, well, all of the people, everyone's our teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone that's come into your life, if you've had like say a really abusive marriage and you've been stuck in abuse for years and years, and well, that person was your teacher and he helped you stand up for yourself. And yeah, okay, ultimately, yes. But and he helped you get to where you are now, right? Like maybe you wouldn't be here if that hadn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think that's something that a lot of people might just say, yeah, like you might not be here. It's destiny. Okay, cool. And that person could have been where they are without needing to, like, that person could have been where they are without needing to go through that kind of abuse.
Did my camera turn off?
Well, it's on now.
Is it recording?
No,
Okay. There it
now
goes.
it's
I don't
recording.
know why it turned off. Okay.
Okay.
Carry on.
Anyway. But yeah, like that's ultimately, I was really happy that she said that to this
Mm-hmm.
person. She was like, I don't feel like I needed to go through all of these, like the multitude of horrible things that happened to me in my life to be in some place of studying spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
There's many people that are here that are studying spirituality that, are studying all kinds of paths on the earth that didn't necessarily have to have like multiple horrible things happen to them to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the context of the situation, it felt as though there was someone who wasn't like, it was almost a way of not seeing their own shadow, right? Like it's almost a way of being like, ouch, your story hits something in me. And so instead of looking at what that hits in me and being in that feeling, I'm going to say, well, maybe it's just the reason why you were here and everyone's teachers, right? Instead of seeing like, ouch,
Going
like it's
into the
hitting
depth
something
of
in
it.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the main cause of spiritual bypassing.
Mm-hmm.
That in the sense of like,
I think it's a way too of not confronting your fear,
totally.
Usually if somebody is spiritually bypassing, that's immediately following some kind of trigger,
Yeah.
that like scares them.
Yeah. Don't look at the dark.
Right.
Don't look at the things that are messy and challenging and hard to look at,
Yeah.
even though we're in a human world that's messy and challenging and hard to look at.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's something I like cultivating, is the part of me that can look the messy, dark shit in the face and just take it for what it is.
Yeah. There's this one lyric to like kind of a rainbow type song that I learned at Lokahi on Maui. Goes, don't be afraid. How's it go? Don't be afraid to face the dark, for if you don't, you'll never let the healing start.
Mm-hmm.
That, and I think, I don't know, it's not well understood, I think, what shadow work is or what the benefit is or I mean, I think in general people know, oh yeah, like it's empowering to face your fears, to do something that scares you. You're afraid of, like
Right.
people will like bungee jump or
Yeah,
something like that,
exactly.
right? But like,
Go skydiving.
how about facing your fear of failure? Or how
Mm-hmm.
about facing your fear of being alone
Mm-hmm.
or not being loved or your fear of rejection?
Mm-hmm.
Those are, it's,
Being abandoned.
bungee jumping in comparison is easy because gravity
Mm-hmm.
does the work for you,
Totally.
and you just
You
have
have
to,
to like push yourself off the edge.
take that one leap and then it's happening to you.
Yeah.
But the rest are kind of like a grueling climb up a mountain where you're responsible for every step that you put in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And, in any moment you have the power to quit or keep going.
Yeah.
And you got to find that willpower to just
Exactly.
like keep working on yourself and keep pressing into that fear
Mm-hmm.
and keep growing in a way that is painful, but ultimately, beautiful. And I'm kind of addicted to it at this point. I feel like that there's nothing better to do
Yeah.
with my life than to work on myself and grow.
Totally.
And I get antsy if I'm just like spending most of my time in the kind of 3D regular world of just working and making money. If I'm doing that too long, if I feel stagnant in my personal growth, like I'm not continuing to change and evolve, I get antsy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what am I doing with my life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that it's like a conscious choice, and you don't have to make it, but also like for me, because I'm totally addicted, I can't not. Like it's almost impossible for me to not.
Right. The pressure, like the I don't know, it just the antsiness of not growing eventually outweighs the difficulty of the process itself.
Totally. Yeah, and there's something about like I've kind of gotten to a point where I'm like I don't really have a choice. Like I have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I have a choice in every moment to do or to not do. And there's definitely times I choose to not do.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. But
For all of us.
totally. But at the same time, it's like ultimately whether I choose to have an accelerated path of growth or I choose to passively receive lessons of growth from day-to-day life, I'm still moving towards ultimately, I believe at least that I'm still moving towards on a soul level something that is fully self-realized. So
Yeah.
why am I going to waste my time focused on all of these different external things? Because in the grand scheme of things, I have this feeling that I know what I want. I know what I really want. And I really, really want to be fully self-realized. I want myself to be, capital S self, to be known, to be incarnated, to be embodied, to be what I am. And ultimately I want that for my own freedom, but I want to be able to give with that. Like that part can just get, like that's all it wants to do is just be and give and make this world help to make this world a better place, help to shine light in the darkness. So I don't know, I can't not do that.
Go ahead. Yeah, when you say like you don't really have a choice, I get this image, you don't have a choice to like evolve and grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get this image of like being dragged down the road, right? Like you're either going willingly
exactly.
or you're getting dragged. And as hard as your whole being can possibly resist, you're still moving down the road, gravel all stuck in your face and all scratched up, right? And I think there's an eventual point where, or for me, there was an eventual point I realized I'm going down this road,
Yeah.
and there's really nothing I can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can do about it is determine how much pain and suffering is inflicted upon me,
Yeah.
and I don't, I can't really say what is that force that's pulling me down the road.
It's a
I don't
great
I don't
question
really
to
know
hold.
what it is, but
Yeah.
it's there.
I don't either. But I mean, yeah, maybe on this is getting way out there, but on like a omniversal principle level, that sounds too big for me to even know what I'm talking about. But maybe there's like a pull for separation to be whole, or like a knowing somewhere that there's something that is whole, and that feeling separate, feeling disconnected is not truth.
Mm-hmm.
And we want truth. We want what, like
I
something
think
about
we're
this human.
ultimately compelled towards it.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah,
and something
at
about
the
this
deepest
human.
level.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, something about this human experience just doesn't feel quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something everyone can resonate with.
Yeah,
Like, no matter where you're
I think that's
from.
the reason The Matrix was so popular.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, for
There's
sure.
something about this world that just isn't quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Yeah.
sense it, and it's all around you. You can't put your finger on it, but you know it somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's
And
some of
that's
us that are obsessed with trying to discover what that is.
totally. And they call us seekers.
Yeah,
So we're endlessly seeking for it.
we're the rogues. One of my favorite
Rogues.
parts there's so many parts of The Matrix. It's probably my favorite movie of all time. I've seen it, 20 plus times. But there's so many subtle parts of it. One of my favorite subtle parts, they talk about how only they revised the version of the Matrix. The first couple versions failed because the people didn't accept it, and the whole system crashed, and whole crops were lost, as they say, right? But they got better and better versions of the Matrix where eventually 99% of people accepted it, right?
Mm.
But but I like the implication there that 1% still do not. And maybe they don't outright reject it, but they know something's off. There's 1% of the population that does not completely buy the simulation.
Totally.
And they at least have a clue that the world I'm living in is not the real world,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like something. I think that's fascinating. Like, and it is that question, and maybe it's the same question of what is it that pulls you down the road, or what is it that draws you down, or what is it that clicks your awareness that you're even being pulled down anything, or
Right.
there is a road. But whatever, like, that's a great question. Like, what is that sense of something being off? What is that sense? Like, what is it that makes people ask those questions? What is it that kind of is stimulated? It's like a whisper
Mm-hmm.
sometimes of like, life is different than you think it is,
Mm-hmm.
and that leads to spiritual quests, and that leads to, I mean, people, it changed their entire lives, go on journeys all across the world. They completely make right angle turns in their life path
Mm-hmm.
because of that whisper.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whisper kind of turns into an itch, and the itch turns into a scratch, and the scratch turns into like everything in me just can't stop paying attention to that. It's like turns from a whisper into this loud ringing bell that's like, okay,
Wake
what
up.
is reality? Yeah. Oh, my alarm clock's going off. Wait, I'm asleep?
It's all a dream.
Yeah. Yeah, and then how do people navigate from there? And I think that's really the question that we're being presented with right now. Like the way that I can see it right now, we are in a time where we have so many different keys that are just out in the open, like mysterious ways of, like, how do I say that? Like, just mystery teachings that were hidden, teachings that were coveted for thousands of years that are just out in the open. And really the question is, what are we going to do with them? You know, it's like you can get the key, but it's up to you to open the box, you know, or whatever, open the door. And that takes work.
I can show you the door, but you're the one who has to walk through it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's something that's quite dangerous actually about people thinking that we've already awakened.
Yeah.
And that we're already there.
Oh yeah, like you're already enlightened. You just have to realize it.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
I don't know. Maybe that's true. I have no idea. But so
I don't either.
I'm pretty sure that most of the people that say that also have no idea.
Right.
They're just spouting that off.
Totally. Because someone else said it and it sounds spiritual and
it just sounds so good.
Yeah, totally.
It just feels true.
It just resonates with something deep in me.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah. And then blindly, I mean, we've talked about that a lot. Is like, okay, so is the new age scene just another way to be asleep? You know, and is it?
Yeah. You fell asleep on the second floor instead of the first floor.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Right. I woke up. Okay, now that I woke up, I'm just gonna, go back to sleep and be in. It's sad. It's sad.
I think one of the deepest. Well, I remember when I came into the new age scene, I was pretty struck by how it was still deeply materialistic. You know, like the materialistic aspect of mainstream American society didn't really get filtered out of the new age scene.
It's like
and in some ways it's heightened because of the presence of the cannabis industry and just huge amounts of money that people had readily available to them. Then it's like, ooh, like I'm abundant. I can get whatever I want. Just, yeah, sure. I don't know. Like
I'm manifesting all of it. I'm not privileged.
Yeah, right.
It's because of my karma.
It's great to have nice things, and it's great to be able to, express yourself through your clothing, through your possessions. I have nothing wrong with possessions, but you can get lost in them. You know, I mean, yeah. If you place the material value over. Yeah, I don't know. Just yes, you're spiritually bypassing, and you're trying to sound cool by spouting off spiritual quotes, and you're trying to look cool by wearing spiritual clothes, and it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah, but energetically, like not holding the actual energy signature that it is to be,
still or like whatever lashing out in anger, or
exactly.
It's just like, well,
still reacting.
Turns out that people are still people, And
yeah. Well, and I think that's something that really, I don't know, it's quite almost oxymoronic in a sense, and I don't know if that would be the right word. It's ironic for sure that people will walk around wearing certain symbols or talking about certain things that they have ultimately no idea about what they mean. And, whether it's that we live in a culture that doesn't teach about those things, or that people don't actually have the personal aspiration to learn about them, and they just think it's cool. It's like it's a cool
like
symbol.
Sacred geometry.
Right, exactly. And these are, I mean, they're, again, like they're powerful symbols that represent,
they're esoteric, and they carry an energy even.
Exactly. And so I don't know, like it makes me, I guess I've had to come to a personal acceptance that not everyone is going to deeply seek as much as I want them to, or as much as, like I have an aspiration
or is available to them.
Yeah, right.
Like you say, there's so many keys out there, more than ever.
If you really want it, you can get it.
Yeah, right. But you have to put aside all of the modern day distractions, and it's incumbent upon you and only you, ultimately, to take on a deeper level of study and cultivation. the other day I was talking to Danelle about meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's every single day there's that, because I'm still getting back into my practice. There's that part of me that just doesn't want to meditate. And, it's incumbent upon me to have the discipline to actually do it,
Mm-hmm.
to overcome the onslaught of excuses that my mind creates.
Totally.
Why I don't have enough time or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's when we're met with those kinds of challenges that it's easier to talk about it. It's always easier to talk about it than it is to step into it. And if we really want to change the world, then the way that we do that is through the work that it takes to be disciplined, to show up for our development, and to find the places inside of ourselves that are corrupt. The world's corrupt, and so are places inside of us.
Right.
And
it's easier to judge the corruption in others than it is to face the corruption within ourselves.
Totally. Completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's hard to look yourself in the face and be like, damn, like I am doing that thing that I hate to see happening in the world, or I'm doing, like, to take responsibility for where those patterns show up in us. And then also to take the time to systematically, go through the process of healing, go through the process of releasing the stuck traumas, go through the process of really creating a new way of being in the world that's based on a different operating system, that's not programmed by our government, that's not programmed by our society, that's not programmed by our traumas, but that's programmed by something bigger than the fallenness of this world. That takes work, you know, and that's where, like, the new world, well, you want a new world, like, okay, stepping into to being humble and, like, dedicated consistently to doing that. I want to see a world where everyone's in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it takes time and it takes life dedication. It's a life path.
Yeah.
So I get why everyone might not want to.
Right. And I think there are a lot of tools available to people who do want to do that, but it's not necessarily readily known, I think, to the person who's just beginning on the healing path. Like you say, it's hard to look yourself in the mirror, and I think even those who avoid the mirror at all costs, it has a way of placing itself in front of you from time to time, where we see those places where we're not living the fullest life we could be, or the places where we don't trust ourselves or we don't love ourselves. And there's a spike of pain, of, like, really seeing yourself the way that you are. And, most people will immediately turn away. But, even if you don't want to turn away, what do you do? And do you have people around you that are willing to look at themselves in that way, have experience with that work? If you start to work on that part of yourself and it's like, oh, you're not hiding it anymore, and it's coming up more to the surface, the maybe the internal weakness, or just those parts that you gotta, like, go over it over and over with the rolling pin and flatten it out and knead it and work with it, right? Yeah. And it's more visible to yourself. You can't hide it, or you're not hiding it from other people. Do those people love and support you, or do they judge you? Do they see that weakness and, like, oh, you're fucking weak? Because that happens.
Totally. Yeah, and I think, right, like, in that space, we're mirrors for those things inside of them too. Right. Yeah, like they see the weakness on you, and it's easier to judge that in another than to see it in yourself. Yeah, totally. And it's an instant deflection. It's like, judgment's great at deflecting. That's what it does.
Mm-hmm.
It goes, oh, I shouldn't connect with some part of me. I need to connect with a part of someone else. Or from a different standpoint, it can be, wow, this is really highlighting something that I need to look at inside of myself.
Right.
So depending on
If
if you
you're
believe
willing,
it
yeah.
or if you're aware of the mechanism at play, because I think a lot of people aren't even aware of that as a mechanism at play, or might see it and then go, why am I such a shitty person? Because I judge other people. And it's like different side of the same coin is just like seeing it for what it is. It's just something that's being triggered. But yeah, I mean, I think it's of the utmost importance to be surrounded by people that support you and you support each other in that path. I mean, again, like for me, one of the hardest parts was when I didn't have anyone that was interested in anything remotely close to what I was interested in. And
they thought you were weird, maybe.
they thought I was
Crazy.
super weird. They thought I was crazy. Some of them thought I was kind of trippy and interesting, but they were like, and at the beginning of my path, from that story I told you when we were talking about like how I became a healer, that I was coming at the world in a way that I feel like a lot of people can, which is, oh shit, I've been asleep for my whole life. And there's all these things going on that everyone else can't see. And I became frantic. And in my own frantic, oh no, I need to wake up. Oh no, the world's asleep. The energy of panic was transmitting through the way that I was speaking about things through my voice. And so people, when they would just feel the energy coming at them and be like, whoa, like too much. Like you're overpowering me, like too much.
Did you feel like, oh my God, I gotta wake everyone else up too?
I did at the beginning. Yeah,
I did too. I think that's part of it.
Totally.
Like, oh my God, I can see, like, well, actually, I hope I don't butcher this, but this is it's been happening for a long time. And Plato had an analogy called the allegory of the cave. You know this one?
I know the story of the cave.
Yeah, I hope I don't butcher it. But so there's people, they're slaves, they're chained to this wall, and the light from the day comes in this cave. All they can see is the back wall of the cave. And so people are passing by, or animals are passing by the mouth of the cave, and it casts a shadow to the back of the cave. And they have their own like cosmology, like that's all that they've known their entire life is just this one view of the world. And then one day, one of them manages to get out of his shackles, and he escapes the cave, and he goes out and he discovers there's this whole new world out there, and there's people out there too. And the sun is shining. He's never seen really the sun before. They had in their own cosmology some idea of where the light came from. So he discovers all this new stuff. And then he goes back into the cave to tell his brethren about it. And they think he's absolutely nuts, and he's totally lost it. Because they can't relate to what he's saying at all.
Yeah, they have no frame of reference.
Yeah.
Context is like everything, really. And if you don't have context, then it's hard. Like, it's hard to really, because I think perception a lot of the time is kind of molded around context. So, yeah, I mean, it's
but it's crazy. It's like, well, yeah, okay, so how do I help people understand? How do I help them see what I've seen?
Totally.
And I mean, really, that's a master who can do that.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think it's natural for the brand new neophyte to give it a shot and just go try and wake everyone up and make themselves look absolutely nuts.
Totally.
But there is a way, I think, and I'm not a master. I don't know the way. I'm just still learning on my own. But there's a way that people can guide a person back towards themselves or towards a greater understanding without triggering the kind of like defense mechanisms that our consciousness can have, the resistance mechanisms, to help people realize things, to reflect them back to themselves without triggering that fight response, you know. Makes me
Yeah.
think of the movie Inception, when they're like in the dream and he changes something, and like the, you know, all the people in the dream look at him like, you know, like with sharp eyes, right? They're like, you are trying to change something about me, right? Nobody likes that feeling like, oh, you're trying to change me, you're trying to tell me what to do, right? And I think the neophyte probably hits all the traps or all the minds running across the minefield, where people are like, I'm not listening to a word you say.
Totally.
You've lost it.
Yeah, there's something that I think along the way, I think the more I learned to use my intuitive abilities and the more I had people attracted, like I would just have people attracted to me for seemingly like some reason they didn't know about. And or I would be just in situations where there would just be someone that would hold a certain shine. You know, there's just something about them, and maybe it's that moment in life they're in, or maybe it's something that they really want but they don't have words for, or an aspiration of some sort that they have that's like this burning thing that I can kind of sense in their energy. And like this is something that I had as well when I would, like when I was with that person who he would speak to this part of me that I didn't know that I had. And I've been learning, still learning, kind of how to speak to a part of someone, even if they're not consciously aware of it. Like in a normal conversation, it's kind of like zoning in or like tuning into that shiny part of them. And then from that place, like talking to that part of them. And you might be just having a normal conversation, but there's something about like how you can kind of plant seeds.
You get a certain look on your face when you're doing it too.
It's kind of mischievous. It feels like, makes me feel like a secret agent, but there's something that's, yeah.
But it's supportive.
It's special.
It's not like manipulative. Like
No.
you know, I mean, I guess
I might be positive.
by,
positive
well, manipulation has a negative connotation,
Yeah.
but really it is just you're using your influence to change something.
Yeah.
Right? Like manipulating an object with your fingers, right? But yeah, there's subtle support.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like holding, I mean, if you can see something in someone that has that, there's a way where like you're seeing, like when I feel that, it's kind of like I'm holding that part of them. Obviously I'm not like hugging them or anything, but like in my awareness, I'm holding that part of them. I'm aware of that part of them. And in doing so, it's like it can speak to that part. And it almost has this subtle effect where sometimes it can bring it more consciously to the forefront of them. Sometimes it can kind of freak people out, but most of the time people like it. Because a lot of times it's a part of people that not a lot of people tend to see.
I think a lot of people, yeah, like if you have that ability to see into people, sometimes I can see where people are not confident about themselves. That's an easy one, you know, like, or if somebody's constantly putting themselves down in a way, like someone who's really attractive that thinks that they're ugly, you know, or someone who's like a really good singer and they just think that they're not up to par or something like that. This is a very simple example, but you know, compliments or that are true, like, you know, true and honest, where you're like, actually, you're a really great singer. You're not just kind of boosting them up or, you know, but if it's authentic and you mean it and they feel it, they'll get a big boost from that, or they're, you know, it kind of like can bring somebody to life in a way,
Totally.
you know?
Yeah. It reminds me of when I was in Bali, I met this girl and she was 18 years old. She was working at this coffee plantation. And she sat down. I was talking to someone else that I was with, and she sat down with us because he knew her. And instantly I could just feel something in this girl's energy. Like she just came, she's 18. I'm some Westerner. She just kind of came up and like,
Balinese girl?
yeah, Balinese girl. I could tell she was shy, but there was something in her that just like, she sat across the table from me, and she was just kind of looking at me really fascinated. And I could tell she was shy, but there was something else in her that was like really just looking like interested in something. And so I tuned into her energy and I just looked at her and she spoke English and I said, "You have really big dreams, huh?" And she was like, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "There's something that you really, really want. Like you deeply, deeply want it. And you don't just want it." I could tell it wasn't just for herself. Like it was this big dream that she was holding. It was almost like dancing in the energy around her or something, or like something in her heart. Something was just so raw and real and authentic about this that was in her. I don't know. And I said, "What is it?" And she said, "I really want to be able to make enough money to send my brother to college." And she said, "I want my family to have more money. I grew up in a really poor family and I really want my family to have more money. And my little brother he has 1 year until he gets out of high school and I want him to go to college." And you could tell, this girl, she's grown up again, like in a impoverished family. There's probably a cap on the amount of money that seems possible to make, but there was a drive in her that was just, it so wanted something more. And all I could say to her was like, just keep feeling that drive. Like whatever that thing is in you, that like the more we talked about it too, the like brighter it got and the more kind of like in the space it got. And it was like I was kind of like coaxing it out, like, and she knew what I was talking about and I was talking to that part of her. And like from that space, it was like somehow it was like giving her energy because it was speaking to a part of her that again like isn't quite seen, and like like boosting something. And it was just so cool. And at the end of me talking to her, I was like, "You're really courageous, like sitting here with me." And I was like, "Are you even intimidated at all?" And she's like, "Yeah, like looking you in the eyes is kind of scary, but I don't know. I just wanted to come sit down." Like there was something in her that was like ready to move past that fear and ready to make a difference in something. And it's special to be able to talk to those parts of people.
Do you feel like did you sense that she was more confident in herself and her ability?
Yeah. She was, at the end of the talk, it was like something of her self-knowing kind of became a bit more solidified. She already had self-knowing. She was strong. There's courage inside of her for sure. And there's strength, but there was something that was, like boosted up more like strong in her energy,
Yeah.
Like she was like, "I'm gonna do this." Like,
Go out and claim the world.
totally. And find a way. Like, that's one of the things I told her, was like, some of the people that make the biggest changes in this world have come from places that are, really where they have nothing.
True. Persevered through a harder life.
They're not comfortable, and that's what makes them
right.
Rise.
I've been loving that concept lately. Do things that are hard.
Consciously. Choose to do it.
Choose to do things that are hard. Get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's one thing that's not bred into our society.
Definitely not.
Be comfortable.
Be
as comfortable as you can.
Yeah.
So comfortable that we can do everything.
It's
and you
way
can't
too
notice.
easy to be comfortable nowadays.
Yeah, totally. Especially in this area of the world.
Yeah. So we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. So we'll be closing soon.
Okay.
Do you want to tell people about, or do you have public offerings at this time?
I do, actually. So I am a theta healing teacher and practitioner, and I'm also a hypnotherapist. I talked about that too, but theta healing is a subconscious reprogramming type of modality where you can go and find the source of limiting issues and traumas and patterns that block us and step into reprogram them, essentially stepping into a greater part of ourselves. It's a really good way to change your life, change patterns, change beliefs, change thoughts in a way that makes lasting change. So I teach this modality. I certify people in it. Excuse me. And I have classes coming up that I'm excited to teach. Um, so the dates of those classes, though, the specific dates, I don't have on me. They're on my phone. Can we
Oh,
just like?
I can also put them in the outro. I'll
Okay,
record an outro.
great.
Yeah.
So, I have two sessions of both basic and advanced courses this year. They're each 3 days. And then I also have, for the people that have taken theta, so if you've taken theta healing and you want to progress more in your study of the work and your study of the connection to the source consciousness, the energy that we use to clear and change, reprogram these beliefs, download new beliefs. It's a really powerful energy. It can do a lot more things than just what those 3 days show. So if you're interested in that, I actually have planned a week-long retreat at Mount Shasta to do a lot of work exploring the energetic functionality of this tool, our energy bodies, how to really fine-tune session work with people, really exploring what this energy is, what does it do, why does it work sometimes, how does it work, how can I cultivate and create a space inside of my consciousness, my awareness, to direct it more in a more refined way. It's the first time I've done this training, so I'm really excited about it. Yeah, I'm using a lot of new tools that aren't readily available, and I'm using the energetic land energies of Shasta to help to ground part of what's going to be brought through. So I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all inclusive. So that's food, that's being at a really cool accommodation with, there's going to be about 13 people there. And we're going to do prana kriya yoga every day to work on the subtle bodies and the energy meridians. And it's going to be really special. So I'm doing that as well. And that's in August.
And for people who might want to experience your work directly, are you taking on clients?
I am. So I'm taking on 2 one-on-one clients right now. I do one-on-one work with people, ultimately to cultivate. So people that are really interested in their transformational path, that want to make really long-lasting changes in their life. Those are the people that I'm looking to take on, and I have 2 available spaces for clients for a year right now. And so that would be working with me every week. So using all my tools with theta, hypnotherapy, the energetic sensing tools that I have to really look at what's going on in your body of energy, help you to refine what's going on, to clear blocks, and also to create a new foundation and structure for your life so that you can not only just have an experience of what you want to be in the world, but that you can actually have a foundation and framework to work over a year's time to actually create, cultivate, and ground and be that in the world. So, yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
And how can people get in touch with you?
So, there's 2 ways that are really good to get in touch with me. 3, I guess. You can email me directly. And my email is medicineweaver, so medicineweaver @gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook. On Facebook, my name is Iskah Avaya, so that's IskahAvaya. And you can go to my website, which is iskahavaaya.com.
And your Instagram?
And I Instagram if you want to see pictures of when I travel to tropical places mostly, but that's not really my business thing. But you can follow me on Instagram if you want.
What's your Instagram name?
Iskah Avaya.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just all one word,
Yep.
same as my Facebook.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and I'm also open to if people, if you have questions about things that you're going through, you can post them on my Facebook site, things like that. I'm open to communicating, conversating with people. And then if you have more questions about my work, check out my website and check out me on Facebook. I'm happy to. I'm here in service, so
Wonderful.
happy to help where and when I can.
Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It was as awesome as I was expecting and hoped.
Of course. I hope we do more.
Yeah, we will. Bye-bye, people.
Peace.
If you guys are enjoying the show, go ahead and let somebody know about it. You can send them to chroniclesofapsychonaut.com. That's the basic website that hosts all of my episodes. And you can let me know what you think on social media at Chronicles of a Psychonaut on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you. See you next week.